Well, I'm looking basically at at adaptation and how people in the field, how the farmers especially are coping, and whether there can be some policy advocacy so that they are enabled and facilitated to cope better with climate change and with because with climate change comes cropping change, and that requires some adaptation, and in that process they need resources. We need to give them these resources that they need. Yeah, yeah.
Talking about the northeastern part of India, um, it is a region which is extremely rich in biodiversity, and communities and major population depend on biodiversity for their livelihood. With this background, what is the greatest challenge of biodiversity conservation as well as livelihood in your part of the country?
It's a great challenge. We support about 63% of the country's forests, but those forests are also dwindling because it so happens that we are also a very rich mining area. We've got coal, we've got limestone, we've also got uranium. And the limestone and coal, especially in the state of Meghalaya, have been mined very recklessly. A lot of forests have been devastated. Some rivers are poisoned. That is a big challenge because these rivers need to be reclaimed. The abandoned mines need to be filled up, need to be regreened. Because what happens is loss of biodiversity means loss of livelihood. Loss of livelihood means conflict, and conflict means violence. So it's a cycle. And if we do not really look into these growing concerns, then we are in for very bad times ahead. Yeah.
So, in the capacity of an activist, when you um, uh, initiate movements and protests, and also organize people to protest against any policy or any such moves which is not in the favor of livelihood as well as biodiversity, how how difficult or how easy is it for you to get more and more people under the umbrella? Because there's a problem that people do acknowledge the problem, but they don't really come to the foreground to fight for it.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge. We've tried different kinds of movements. We've we've tried to get people together, but then people are actually pursuing their bread and butter. They have no time to spare for these movements. These are essentially middle class movements. And but also the middle class is the least interested in issues. So it's a great challenge, but then we've also tried to knock on the doors of the court. We went to the Supreme Court some years ago in 2005 to ask for a ban on mining in some of the heritage sites, because we have these heritage caves which are also limestone caves, and people are using dynamite to blow up those huge mountains. So we went there, and then it was there that the Supreme Court gave a directive to the state government of Meghalaya to come up with a mining policy. So you can imagine a state which is so rich in minerals but does not have a mining policy. It's a go as you please policy. And the miners or the coal mine owners have absolutely no responsibility at all to the environment. Nobody can hold them accountable. Because in most states of the northeast, land belongs to the people. We say land belongs to the people, but who are these people? We say land belongs to communities, but where are these communities? Communities are fragmented. As I said earlier, our goals now as a tribal community have changed. We are not homogeneous anymore. There is the tribal elite, there is the tribal poor, and our goals are different. So this loss of social capital for us is a very dangerous thing. And so far it has been that only the court has been able to help us. In fact, in 1996, some of us joined issues with that gentleman who filed the case against putting a cap on cutting trees, on timber sale and all that. So we got that 10-year ban on export and cutting of timber. At least in those 10 years, our forests regenerated. But then again, the Supreme Court came up with this thing of You can cut your forests, but you have to have a working plan, and people can do all kinds of things, under those sort of regimes. Yeah.
Um, Ma'am, when you talk about economic activities like mining taking place at a big level, where there are big, powerful players involved, and there's huge lobbying, as we all understand. Uh, we also understand that it's extremely critical to create a lot of pressure on the government, because we've seen in the case of Niamgiri, Orissa, how the activities were stalled for a long time because a lot of pressure was created. In your part, in your region, in the northeast, basically, what do you think is the way out to create pressure on the government?
The only way out is to have people's movements, because when big groups get together, it affects vote bank politics. Unless something affects vote banks, politicians are not going to lift their finger to do anything. I'm again coming back to Meghalaya, because in that state it is the mining lobby that is actually running the government. If the mining lobby wants this government out, they'll have it out. If they want another government in, they'll have it in. So how do you break that kind of power, it's a very difficult call, but it's a call that we have to take, and we create advocacies, through the media. We actually look at these sort of forums as networking forums, because maybe the issue might look small, compared to other issues in the rest of the world, but for us it's the beginning and the end of our world, and we expect people to have some empathy, to give us resources, to provide us the resources, the tools on how they have done it in other places, and maybe we can replicate some of those, those mechanisms, those